India will become the world's third largest construction market by 2025, and thereby the infrastructure sector is a key driver for the Indian economy. The construction industry in India is the second largest after agriculture. It accounts for about 11% of India as GDP and contributes to the national economy also by providing employment to a large number of people. According to studies, 32 of the world's 100 most dense cities are in India. Delhi NCR is at number 136. The future of Indian real estate sector is likely to grow upwards both statistically and literally as land availability also becomes a key concern. With innumerable high-rise buildings being constructed, there are environmental, safety and security concerns which are associated with them. How will our developers respond to these challenges? And are the end users, the residents, aware of all factors is what this episode would look into.
Hello and welcome to another episode of India Risk Report, and in this episode we are looking at the safety and security of tall structures across India, particularly as India is witnessing an enormous number of high-rise structures coming up in our urban centers, and India could at this rate soon become the world's third largest construction market. But currently infrastructure, which is a big driver of the economy, is at this point of time inadequate to meet the demand of the existing urban population. There are pluses and minuses to the infrastructure story, and therefore we have two experts with us who are going to help us understand that what are the challenges that infrastructure and the infrastructure related projects face in India. We have with us once again Professor Paul from the School of Planning and Architecture and a construction management expert. Thank you for being with us on the show again, sir. And we have Mr. Pankaj Dharkar from Ahmedabad, who is from NEP Consultants and has expertise on tall buildings. So Mr. Dharkar, the first question that comes to my mind is, how do you study or how do you look at the rise of so many tall buildings in India? More so, what are the challenges that they are likely to project both to the immediate environment and to the urban story in India?
Well, I think me as a MEP consultant and a building engineering consultant take it as a big opportunity which my generation is getting. A tall building always demonstrate country's growth. Tall buildings shows the power that country has, and definitely a lot of engineering gets into it. And we do believe that today India has good engineers, good architects, good structural engineers who can complement these efforts. The biggest challenge which I feel is the infrastructure, which could be the fire services themselves. Everybody needs to understand that the tall buildings need to fight fire within themselves. You know, all infrastructure need to complement any challenge which comes out of any fire. Look at the recent incidents which happened in Mumbai itself, when in Worli a tall building got into fire, and there was no way the rescue operation could have been done from outside. The building fought its fire from inside, and we were fortunate that all internal systems were working. So it is important that well-designed buildings with the fire and security systems do operate. So maintenance is one of the key aspects. The people's awareness who are living in this tall buildings is another challenge, and they must be aware of each and every aspect. In case of any emergency, how do you get evacuation done, how the equipments function. You can't depend on fire services for all this in the beginning. The fire tanker will reach or the personnel will reach post 30 minutes.
So essentially, what is your internal response mechanism, which is equally important. But Professor Paul, all the points that have just been brought out to us by Mr. Dharkar, you see, London is a city which has traditionally had big fires. And London's a city which is pretty obsessed with fire safety in buildings. But still you had the tragedy in 2017 June of the 24-story Grenfell Tower in London, which left about 70 people dead and 79 injured. I mean, this was catastrophic by any standards, and not certainly just London standards. So even after all those measures were taken in a developed country and in a country which takes fire safety, security very seriously, if that has happened, how do you then correspond it with the figure that comes out that 32 of the world's 100 most dense cities are in India? And I'm sure the density of population in a city like Mumbai, which Mr. Dharkar was just bringing out, is really a cause of concern and is really a cause of us getting our act together very quickly, if not having done it by yesterday itself.
You rightly said that the British practices, codes and standards for life and fire safety are far, far ahead. And if you look at global practices, so you can classify yourself in American practices and the British practices. So they are kind of, benchmarks by themselves. And the kind of things that have happened there are open to all. Now, coming to the story of India, in case of tall buildings which are above 50 meters and above, there's a huge responsibility on the systems to work, because if the system doesn't work, there's no way you can reach inside. And unfortunately, their kind of responsibilities that we have for the maintenance, facilities management people, etc., is absolutely appalling. It doesn't even, before that, if you go into the design stage, unfortunately, we don't have a system of any consultants being registered, or the pre-qualifications stated there, the contractors that we have. So few buildings may come up very nicely and they are probably designed very well, but neither our contractors are registered nor our skills are.
How do they get the NOC?
No, NOC is just they go and just look at the few parameters, but out of the water will actually come out with the desired pressure on that day. So there are two aspects. One is the performance reliability, meaning that if it opens, water will come in. The other one is the performance, that yes, that much heat will be taken away and it will diffuse. Now, if you look at the international standards, these two parameters, they still are big questions. Now, in India, where it's not a statement or on Mr. Dharkar, he is absolutely a very senior professional, but most of the fire consultants, they have no recognized qualifications, no registered. Even a contractor who is working on systems, correct me if I'm wrong, he can undertake a responsibility and start doing the work.
So, Mr. Dharkar, I mean, this obviously is a slanted inference to your ilk, not necessarily you. But, there's another area which you may like to also comment on, that, in cities like Mumbai, the FAR for rehabilitation of people and the so-called high-rise slums that have come up are even more shoddily implemented than just run-of-the-mill high-rise construction. People are so desperate for space, they're only too happy to get into a newly constructed building and hoping God and prayers will take care of everything.
So I think my comment again is a little positive. There are both types of work happening. We are fortunately associated with more than 72 projects which exceeds 150 meter in height, and close to 300 projects which we are doing, which in definition of NBC will become a high-rise building in Mumbai itself. And the redevelopment which you are rightly saying as a vertical slum, you rightly use the word, and they are going up to 40 stories, 45 stories. And the quality of material which a developer uses in his cell project are definitely going to be different what he uses in the redevelopment material. But again, I make my statement that there are two class of developers, there are two class of people who are doing this work. There are very good engineered buildings happening, and there are, as Mr. Paul rightly said, that in my country, unfortunately, there is no qualification required for designing. In developed countries, if I am an engineer and if I do want to practice a consultancy, I require certain qualification. Engineering degree is not good enough, but also the experiences. If I have designed a 30-meter building, then only I can design a 45-meter building, and when I go beyond 90 meter, then only the qualification comes. I can tell you there is only one place in India, and that is GIFT City in Ahmedabad, where they have classified consultants, saying that design consultants who are qualified to do work up to 90 meters, 150 meter and beyond 300 meter, they have made a qualification yardstick. But such qualification should come everywhere. Not only that, the qualification of fire engineering and everything is extremely important for today's building.
Okay, I'll come back to that again, and there's a question on Ahmedabad I also want to ask you.
Oh, really?
But Professor Paul, sir, traditionally India has developed buildings more of concrete, unlike the West. But there is still a major shift in this trend, and buildings now are being designed in steel and composite structures. Elaborate.
Concrete is a very safe material as far as the fire is concerned. There's a whole lot of research. We can predict the thermal behavior of concrete, what's going to happen at 500 degrees Celsius, 1000 degrees Celsius or whatever. And fair amount of expertise exists in terms of making them fire safe. Unfortunately, the steel and composite buildings, they need a special treatment, and we at this stage we don't really have that kind of an expertise, because you're going to put some kind of a coating on top of that, and if there is a small breach in the coating somewhere, that's where the heat is going to penetrate. And we're not talking about the normal level of heat, we're talking about something like 1000 degrees plus.
So,
and
that should go out as a warning to many of the people
Absolutely.
thinking that new technology is
You have to be
what
very, very careful.
they're opting for, but it's
Yep.
not necessarily best. But we need to go in for a break. We'll come back after a break to look at which of the cities in India could be trendsetters, which are the options for India which are best, and most importantly, is India ever going to be able to get past its crowded cities with skyscrapers to a new model? But that after a break. Welcome back. We are looking at the importance of tall structures and their safety and its impact on the Indian economy, since infrastructure is one of the big drivers of the Indian economy. But equally importantly, how safe are the people who are living in high-rise structures? Mr. Dharkar, sir, it is said that Ahmedabad seems to be the most ambitious of the lot of cities after Mumbai, with 13 skyscrapers coming up and whose heights are presumed to be ranging between 200 to 400 meters. Now that's huge for Indian standards, but is Ahmedabad doing it purely to put a signature stamp on the cities to look out for, or is Ahmedabad using space because there is a shortage of space? Where is really the need versus the motivation to do that? So how do you balance it out?
I think, to my knowledge, this information is not right, Maroof. The maximum height which is coming up in Ahmedabad today is 70 meters.
But it's planning to.
On the riverfront, they have given permission up to 100 meters, to my knowledge. And in GIFT City, which is a special city, the dream project for Prime Minister, the building heights are in the range of 120 to 130 meters. Okay. They have a dream, they have an aspiration to reach to 300 meter building as an iconic structure, but that is only one building to my knowledge, and maybe you are better informed than me, though you are outsider.
I suppose you are better informed, but this is the input that's available to us on the...
That 300 meter building is going to be an iconic building, and that is exactly the reason you said. They want to really emphasize that financial hub is going to be Gandhinagar, it is going to be GIFT City, and it is still struggling for the aviation permissions. So that's why they have not gone ahead, but in the master planning it does exist.
Okay, Professor Paul, safety concerns. High courts in Jaipur and Delhi have restricted the heights of building around airports. You just talked about aviation clearance. And the fire accident in 24-story building in London, as a case in point, is something that, again, how many of us have even taken note of that? And most importantly, several fire stations do not have the equipment which can reach the uppermost floors of high-rise buildings. So where do we feel that we can really hope to get some kind of safety to those who are living in dream penthouses?
Maroof, you give me a couple of minutes. You see, one is the capacity of the fire department to fight it out. As Mr. Dharkar said, these tall buildings, you're not going to get a ladder to reach there, and working on that ladder, one person fighting it out, it's never going to be efficient. It's only a fait accompli, and few things can be done. But the second thing is, in all our urban areas, even if this person reaches there in time, and it will be a huge achievement if you are able to reach there with that kind of traffic we have. We'll never be able to make up that kind of response. But there is also this another issue of how tall do we want to go?
That's the question.
The trouble is that signature or making a mark is one aspect, but it's also putting a pressure on the city service. City has a capacity by way of either population or by way of going vertical. Eventually, all that is going to come down to the roads and other infrastructure. So if we are going to go and make it vertical all the time, then probably we need to see how the other infrastructure will augment. Now, if suppose that happens, but then the trend needs to also consider, do we have the bylaws, do we have the codes and standards in place for these kind of tall and super tall buildings? Unfortunately, NBC is looking at the range of 30, 40 storied buildings. Beyond 50 storied buildings, the capacity of NBC to give directions for the kind of buildings based on which the approvals are given, it's very, very limited. Unfortunately, in Mumbai also, the National Building Code is not applicable. They have their own codes and standards. So if other cities are going to ape, they will have to make their own codes and standards for apply. Now, if the competence in the country in terms of qualified professionals and other people does not exist, so what kind of a code and standard can they make? So we need to have that recipe available so that we can control the buildings, accordingly create capacity for the fire departments, then post-occupancy responsibilities, maintenance and other aspects. How do you know that the water is shut down? So who owns that responsibility? So unless we block all these corners, we are looking at a beautiful dream, but the dream will only going to become a catastrophe. And in a place like London, if the mistake could happen because it was basically a maintenance issue. So if it can happen there, and in our buildings, it's a rampant everyday affair that we have no semblance of respect to maintenance, then what are we looking at?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have some points.
I just want to also ask you, linked to what he has said, sir, that if we say we don't have the expertise, it is said that Indians have largely built Dubai. How is Dubai getting to make all those high rises by the same Indian minds, the same Indian architects, the same Indian hands that can make Dubai? Why isn't it that we are getting it right in India? And secondly, we call ourselves a rising power. 150 years ago, the United States made cities like New York and made buildings like Empire State Building. In 1 year, they erected a building with whatever 110, 120 floors, and they had the permissions, they had everything laid out. So what is it wrong with us that we can't seem to be getting any of the figures right? We have the manpower, we have the resources, we have the space in India. We're not an island country, and we still seem to be floundering.
The current NBC clearly defines how to address the tall building. So I differ there with him. The use of lift was probably prohibited earlier in fire situation. But the current NBC really clearly shows how a lift can be used by a fireman, and he can go up to 80 floors also, 90 floors also. And we have been designing some wonderful projects in Mumbai, and which is going to demonstrate to the world that this is all possible. And we are working hands in gloves with the chief fire officers and directors for Maharashtra, Gujarat, and we are really having good competent people. And what you rightly said, what is happening in Dubai, we are also doing equally good work. Today, one slab is getting transferred into 6 days. Some projects are happening with 5 days per floor. So with similar speed, we are also progressing. So it's not that we are not catching up. There are opportunities coming up. Today, my developers are really looking for good technologies. They are appointing good contractors. Yes, we are behind Dubai. I don't say that we are equally there, but we are also using the similar scaffolding technologies, similar engineering technologies. Today, my all buildings are completely designed. Simulations are done in advance for even an earthquake. All our engineering systems have flexibility. The air conditioning systems are taking care of all wind loads, outside air qualities are being monitored. All is happening. I am not saying that every building would be doing it, but I would say that whatever good tall buildings are coming up in Mumbai, I am really proud of that we are getting this opportunity to work with good quality. And there are many builders or developers, they are taking concept from outside and we are implementing them to the accuracy. In fact, there is a good amount of work is happening. The impression is not right that we are not only not following the good practices. In fact, you will be surprised that what you were referring about the London fire, this is India, where we did the experiment in Gandhinagar IIT, where the exactly same glazing material was brought from US, who were the supplier. We have an excellent facility in IIT Gandhinagar, where 3-story structure is in place. We put this facade, and facade was put to the similar condition, and we tested it in India with huge amount of cameras and drones and capturing all fire condition, and the research papers are coming out. So our own students, our own IITs are doing this. Is first time which happened in the world.
Well, indeed, that's very comforting, sir. And so, but anyway, I need to give Professor Paul a chance to respond.
See, no, unfortunately, I mean, I would like to disagree with the, now, for example, in NBC, it says that the staircase has to be exposed to the surface, external surface, etc. Now, in tall and super tall buildings, there's no possibility. Most of the buildings would tend to put them inside. So, NBC, it directly conflicts with that. NBC takes about the building envelope external rating about 1 hour. In 1 hour, all this glazing in the 10 minutes they will fail, and then we have a huge problem of leaping flames outside. The kind of compartmentation between the lifts and the staircases, all that is coming inside. Now, what happens to the diverse distances, etc.? So that is those issues are unresolved. Earlier, we used to have an envelope which was capable of about 2 hours, but that obviously is not possible. Then either we go for fire-rated glass, etc. No, those issues have been removed. Now, unfortunately, our National Building Code is highly prescriptive. For these kind of buildings, we need to go for some boundary conditions as a performance in terms of that should the assumptions go wrong, then what? Our code simply says, do this, do this, do this. And in that case, the consultant himself defines the assumption, himself defines the answer. And how do we know what do we check in that?
Well, very clearly, there are 2 points of view. One is that what should be the set of rules that should define future constructions, but equally important that are rules only going to define the path of the growth of the Indian infrastructure and construction industry, or hard-end and hard-nosed research which gives us indications that the man making the rules in the office rooms has probably not yet seen the research that comes out and shows the new path quite clearly. We have to do a mix and match between what is prescriptive and what is really descriptive. But on that note, we need to wind up the show. It's an important subject, and it's an important subject that everybody who's making an investment in properties and infrastructure should try and look at more seriously. Until our next episode, goodbye.